Welcome back to Dogma Debate, 24-hour broadcast-a-thon for modestneeds.org. And we're now streaming on Spreaker, so go check that out as well. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube and you're like, I can't watch or stream the video the whole time, there is now an audio-only link available. It's on facebook.com/dogmadebate. You can go grab that link, the audio-only link for Spreaker. And also, you've got the Spreaker app. You can listen there. You can listen with a web browser. We've made it a lot easier for you to listen because we want to help as many people as we possibly can. And now joining me on the couch, which is becoming a very serious thing, I understand, is all the way from, well, Milwaukee, our friends in Mythicist, Milwaukee. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. You got to use your
directly
mic
into
there,
that
right?
microphone.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
This is our podcast host, by the way. So
yeah,
mine?
you should be.
I don't know if mine was. There we go.
Really? Hold on.
Yeah, you sound good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it sounds good now.
Yeah, he's good.
He's usually having headphones on, so.
Oh, okay. So introduce yourselves, starting at the very back.
So I am Sean Frasick, president of MM.
Brian Edward, director.
Principal and Don Vice President.
Awesome. Well, guys, welcome. You flew,
Thanks for having
you flew
us,
all the
David.
way out, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you for putting us on.
Yeah, no
Appreciate this.
problem.
It's an honor for us.
Yeah, it's we're not really. I'll say we're beloved in the atheist community right now. So.
Yeah, and I wanted to I wanted to talk about that. And
Sure.
so many secular people will sort of get on me for bringing on Christians that I disagree with, but they understand. They're like, we know that you want to have that sort of dialogue even if you disagree. But then as soon as there's some sort of mix-up in the secular community, right?
Yeah.
And I want to bring someone on that's sort of being disagreed with in that respect, then it seems like, oh, how dare you? Now you're on that team.
Right.
I can talk to people without being on their team. You know what I mean? And so let's open the conversation. If we're going to be open to people that we disagree with from that fundamental standpoint, why not be able to disagree with people that are on our own camp, that we're 95%, most of the community I might be 90% with, some I'm 98, some I'm 87. Why throw the entire relationship away over that last few percentage points? So
Yeah, and I appreciate that, the way that you run your show and the mentality behind that. For us, when it comes to like the Mythicist Milwaukee, like Myth Information Conference or Mythcon, for us it's not only for people of differing opinions to share and speak to each other, but also for everyone to see, where do we come together? Where are our commonalities? Despite our differences, for us it's important for people to understand, where do we come together?
Yeah.
that's a great point.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to do and bridge the gap between even atheists and Christians, to say where can we find the commonality, and not only that, how can we work together to help people. And I don't think you guys were here when I announced this. I'm not sure if you were, but I said next year what I wanted to do, maybe you were here, next year what I wanted to do with this event is sort of an atheist versus Christian fundraiser thing, where we try to get Christians involved with fundraising and atheists and see who can raise the most.
That's a great idea.
Just in fun, to talk about morality, to bring awareness to that, but also have a little competition with it. I don't know why I haven't thought of that before, being that that's exactly what I do on my show, week in and week out, is Christian and atheist conversations. But that's what I would like to see happen, because you want to be able to bridge the gap and work across the aisle to help more people, and you can when you work with religious folks. Well, guess what? You can also do that when you work with Republicans or people who completely disagree with you on multiple issues. And so building a wall around ourselves and pretending that we're the only ones that are right sounds way more Jehovah's Witness than it does sound, skeptic and free thinker. It sounds very Scientology-esque, very cultish, right?
Yeah, you
so
can create the insular community that many religious people sought to get out of.
Exactly. And that's what I'm afraid of happening. I don't want that to happen with our community. I love it too much. I want to see it continue to grow. Yeah. So you guys, of course, tell the story briefly, sort of what you went through and
we'll back up. So Mythicist Milwaukee has been around since January of 2013. We started as an atheist organization, and in the beginning, really grassroots. We're trying to figure out what we're doing, what people find interesting. And over the years, we've done different things. We've done like movies and videos and podcasts, and we've worked with comedians and actors and, all these different types of people. And, we started Mythcon in 2014. We were on our fourth one this last year, where it was really just kind of a pedestrian atheist conference where you bring atheist individuals in, they do a PowerPoint or we have a debate or whatever the case is. And in Mythcon 4, what we started toying with is one of our underlying goals is start bringing more entertainment-based personalities or even topics into this world, because we see the value of comedy and entertainment. And you being in LA, I'm sure you see it all the time. I mean, Adam Carolla does a show here. Like, the more mainstream like figures you get involved in whatever you're trying to, promote, helps, because you're bringing in a different audience, mainstream audience. And for Mythcon 5 or Mythcon 4, what we wanted to do is, we brought in some atheist speakers, and we also brought in some YouTube personalities, really well-known YouTubers, Armored Skeptic, Shiwan Head, Sargon of Akkad, and we also had a debate on Islam between Asr Nomani and Faisal, Saeed al-Mukhtar. We also had the father of the leader of the Church of Scientology, Ron Miscavige, speaking out against Scientology. So it was funny, as we were planning this thing, we were like really getting ready to feel the brunt of Scientology and Islam.
And those were the ones you were worried about.
Those are the ones we were worried about. Yeah,
and we had a movie, Batman and Jesus, so we thought, we'd have Christianity attacking us. These are really the three groups that we were really worried about.
Yeah, and funnily enough, when we showed Batman and Jesus in Greece and Kenya for the same day as the premiere in Milwaukee, and in Greece they actually did get protesters from the Christians, which was funny.
Right. And Asra Nomani, Faisal, and Melissa Chen all have received some credible threats from the Islamists.
Correct.
So that's what we were bracing for.
Right. So we're writing our press releases around Scientology and Islam. And, lo and behold, all of a sudden, people start figuring out that Sargon's there, Armored and Shu, which are the nicest people in the world. And we just went through months of just online harassment, just nonstop, thousands of notifications a day. And funnily enough, when you throw these conferences, especially us in the beginning, we always thought the religious were going to be like protesting us at some point. But it turned out the atheists started protesting us in this case. So that was just like a complete shock to us.
The dogmatic individuals
Yeah.
from the atheist community.
That is shocking.
Yeah. So, bringing in YouTube celebrities to a conference, I guess, is a no-no. Who are also atheists, who started as atheists, who or promote atheism, again, to wide audiences.
Now, let's talk about that. Because why would atheists who have let go of their religion protest another atheist conference? What is the why?
Yeah, I think, now some of it is just downright, the criticism, you guys are vile, how could you possibly do this, analogies to Hitler. Then others were criticisms, like, I really don't like that person, he doesn't have anything good to say, so why bring him, right?
Sure.
So let's be fair. But I think that as atheists, it really describes what you don't believe and doesn't stand for anything of what you do believe. And I think what's kind of happened is like people's version of humanism, right? Then they'll say, well, does this fit my version of humanism? And for some, it didn't. Now the question is that version of humanism too narrow? Because I feel like viewpoint diversity is important, and even if somebody is wrong, but they seem intellectually honest or they have a big following, well then let's talk to them. Let's see where we can disagree, or see where we can find agreement, and then hash out the differences. Even if we don't get anywhere, again, the audience can listen, or maybe even moderate, and it's saying that there's good arguments on both sides.
Well, that's part of it, but the other big part of all of this, and this. Brian was really in tune with all of the things that are happening online, on Twitter, on YouTube, as far as social justice warrior, anti-social justice warrior. I had no idea. Fritz had no idea.
Yeah, I was just telling Emery at the last Reason rally, that's the first time, a year and a half ago, was the first time I even heard of the terms social justice warrior and regressive left. And I was sitting at a table with Dave Rubin, and Paul Provenza was talking to me about Dave Rubin's really pushing the regressive left, and I was there sitting acting like I knew what he was talking about. I was like, that's really cool. Then I found out later, I have a lot of research to do.
Yeah. So like when we planned this, again, we were kind of in the dark. Brian kind of knew what was going on, but we had no idea what to, get to the point where it was. But what's happening online is, when you look at conferences, when you look at attendance, and this has been proven, and people don't like to hear it, but it is what it is. Conference attendance has been down. You see the same speakers, the same talks, the same topics.
Well, I don't think it's just that. I think there's, and there's probably a lot of people listening too that aren't even necessarily in that community. You know what I mean? Some
Yeah.
people are just listening from the outside, and this is their sort of window into something that they didn't even know existed 3-4 hours ago. Or how long have we been doing this? Oh my goodness. Way more than that. 6 hours ago, 7 hours ago.
Yeah.
This is something that it's one of these things that the secular community in itself is like any community, because unfortunately we have people in it. And anything, you talk about sales conferences, you go to vacuum conferences, whatever the hell it is, there are going to be things that happen within certain communities, video game communities, Comic-Con, it's all the same thing. People end up going, well, this guy behaved weird when he got drunk, or this girl did this when she, or this woman did this when she, and then later people talk, people form little groups, they talk smack online, and then someone gets blocked and banned. This isn't an atheist thing, it's a human thing.
Right.
And we also have to understand that the schisms and splits in religion, the my church is better than your church, the we're going to heaven, you're going to hell, the stuff that we talk about religions about, that is also a human condition. That's not a religious thing. Schisms are not a religious thing. They are a human condition. And we have experienced that exact same thing. Conferences exploded about 5 or 6 years ago. American Atheist did a wonderful job pushing conferences, and then all of these little cons blew up, became regional, and then they started exploding, especially in the South, especially in the Bible Belt, where people were forced to go to church and wanted a way to rebel without standing up and telling people they were rebelling. They could just go 4 or 5 miles down the road or take a 3-hour drive to Kansas or whatever and be around 500 or 600 atheists, and their family didn't even have to know about it. This was something that they could go be around like-minded people and have a good time. There were solstice parties for winter solstice instead of Christmas where no prayer was offered, and people just wanted a way out of the stuff that they were forced to do over and over for years and years as kids. And if you look at it, there are actually more conferences and stronger atheist groups in the South where there is more forced religion. New York, California, there are some groups, but they're not like the Dallas groups or the Alabama groups, or the Kansas City Oasis, for example, that literally meets every Sunday morning and has what you would look at as a church service, everything minus the preaching. They do music, entertainment, people give talks on science and presentations. It's empowering, it's humanism, and it's every single Sunday. And we've got Sunday assembly, and there's all these sorts of things. Conferences started to die off for a lot of reasons. For one, you're saying the same people at the same conferences. I was a part of that group. We felt like a traveling circus. Everywhere I went, it was me, Matt Dillahunty, Seth Andrews, David Fitzgerald, Richard Carrier. We were just the traveling, doing the monkey dance in different cities every couple of months. It was cool for me because it was like a family reunion. 6 or 7 times a year, I get to see all my friends and family that have accepted me for who I am. And then, it got to the point that a lot of bigger celebrities wouldn't want to come because they wouldn't want to be accused of things. I don't want to get accused of sexual assault or sexual harassment or looking at someone the wrong way and being accused of that. And I don't want to get drunk and say something that ends up on YouTube or ends up on a blog somewhere, so I don't want to offend anybody. So the larger personalities started saying, I don't want to go. So they started tapping sort of the mid-grade people, the mid-grade audiences. And then that same thing started happening to us, like getting tagged or accused of something or blackballed, you're not allowed to come to this thing, or if you invite this person, that means you're okay with racism. And these weird ties kept getting linked together. So people weren't wanting to go. A lot of women weren't wanting to go to the conferences because, well, God, it sounds like it's predatory men at every conference. That's all they talked about. So it's like, if I'm a woman, I don't want to go to that conference. It sounds like I'm going to be victimized. And if I'm a man, I don't want to go to that conference because I don't want to be accused of doing something that I didn't do. And so if everybody's afraid to go because nobody wants to be accused of something or sexually assaulted or harassed because that also happened, you're just like, I don't want to go. And then these massive conferences ended up having 130 people. And so it starts to die off, and it's really sad because we were building a very strong community. And it's not just about the sex stuff. It's about social justice things to where this atheist conference became about issues that weren't atheist related. And then we started to turn on each other.
Well, see, and that's the thing, and that's where I think we're trying to challenge atheism in general. New atheism is very successful in the fact that they've done such a great job of making atheism very, less taboo, more accepting in the West. If you go to Kenya and you're an atheist, or if you go to Saudi Arabia, you're an atheist, like that's a completely different story. So there's a need there. So if you look at it as an industry, there's supply and demand. In the West, that is not what people are talking about. The God question isn't as fun as it used to be, and that's where we think if you look online, all the different conversations about identity politics, social justice, all these other things are happening, and this is where people's interests are. So in order for us to survive, we have to start changing with the times. I mean, that's just part of, so, bringing in people that talk about these things. Yeah, we're not talking necessarily about an atheist topic, but we're talking about what atheists are talking about. What's wrong with that? We have to change.
Right, and atheism would talk about science. Often, ridding the world of like pseudoscience ideals, I think goes hand in hand with atheism. But what I think you mentioned, community, is the biggest part. I mean, the reason why the clubs and the organizations are bigger in the South seems obvious, right? You have a lot more religious people. You feel like an outsider, and you want to feel like I'm around my people. And I think right now we're divided. The community is divided on political lines. Sports is divided on political lines. Is it okay to take a knee at the anthem, for example? I mean, people are divided on that, right? I mean, I looked online, even the furry community is divided by politics, right? So the smallest of subgroups. So it's do you feel welcome, right? Okay, you can look it up. They call them the Nazi-furs and the Antifa-furs, which I think is really...
that's a real thing?
That's a real thing. You can Google that up. So, but we're divided by politics. And then, so when you have a conference, who feels welcome? Is it this in-group? Is it that out-group? What we really want to do is have a place where both groups can come, share your ideas, and if you want to share respectfully, we don't care what your political viewpoint is. In fact, we want to hear it. Like, free speech isn't a zero-sum game. I think a lot of people think that if they're speaking, then that takes away from my free speech. But I don't agree with that concept. The more we get, and if we can talk that out, you would believe how many people would moderate. We had a good mix of people that on the left or on the right, but a lot of people were thinking, when you meet somebody in person, I understand you a little bit. Okay, I see what you're saying. Maybe I'm not fully on board. Maybe I'm not ready to vote, but I get it. But that's that seed that like you can marinate on. If nothing else, maybe we can be like less tribalistic, less brutal to each other.
Yeah.
I noticed one thing that happened to me. People were saying, this was shocking to me. They said I was accused of being alt-right.
Yeah.
And
so were we.
So were we.
And I remember going, that is like the absolute. That's my antithesis. Is the alt-right. That's everything I've wanted to fight against. Is bring freedom and let people have the religion that they are a part of, that they want to be part of, and not force anybody to do anything. And then alt-right, I actually had to look it up. I'm like, is that just a new conservative? What does that mean? And then I get into it, and I'm like, this is literally conservatives for white people and white rights. And I'm like, how could anybody think that's what I'm about? And so when I start pushing back, a lot of it I would just ignore. But when I actually started to push back and say, in what way? Like, tell me how. How is that the case? And every time it was the same answer. It was, well, you've used some of the same rhetoric. And here's what they're talking about. When Antifa, representing the so-called left, would go to a university and start a fire, I would get on Twitter and go, hey guys, let's not act like children. Right. Let's respect free speech and address their ideas with better ideas.
Right.
And apparently someone on the alt-right had also said something similar, so suddenly I take on all of their beliefs or everything that they wanted.
What?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
He almost punched me for saying that.
No, it goes both ways, right? Because like the alt-right want to talk about immigration doesn't mean that anyone talks about immigration as alt-right, nor the same way that Antifa is very much against police over, the violence and police over abusing their authority doesn't mean that that's a far left position either, right? I mean, you could be conservative and against police violence.
Yeah, but these are all baseless accusations. I mean, we did not start experiencing this problem until after Charlottesville happened, where everyone thought Nazis were under their beds because of something that happened.
Well, the emotions ran high, and rightly so. I understand that. Charlottesville was horrific and very sad.
Right.
And I mean, they immediately caught the guy. He's in jail now, which is what we would want to see. But I see what you mean.
But that's
the emotions were so heightened that it became the boogeyman. So
anyone that's under that camp is you're automatically guilty. How do you prove your innocence of saying you're not?
And that's not critical thinking.
No.
And that has been my problem. Even though we raise ourselves up as skeptics. Mm-hmm. When that emotion ran high for all of us, and then in that moment you would hear someone say something that Richard Spencer had also said, you've got to break down the critical thinking and say, is that just a single similarity, or does this guy now believe everything Richard Spencer said, and now David Smalley is a white nationalist?
Yeah.
Darius, you better not use that drop.
Yeah.
But my point is, people will do that because you say that one thing, and they absorb all of those beliefs to you.
Right.
And then you're acting a lot like the religious community that we often come out and condemn and say, guys, even if you're religious, but be respectful of other people. And yet in our own community, we were not being respectful. We did not have diversity of views. We didn't respect anybody's views. If I found your views harmful, I could just call your employer and say that you're a child molester at any means necessary to get you fired.
Right.
Then I've done my job as an activist. That's not being liberal. That's not. That's bordering the line of fascism, yet that's supposed to be what you're against.
And it's missing nuance. I mean, I get it why people are afraid. I mean, Charlottesville is weird, right? You have people like Richard Spencer, but he's not the only one. Like Augustus Invictus is there. Millennial Woes, Baked Alaska. All these people are on YouTube, and nothing's happened to them. The murderer's in jail, right? But these guys are still spitting out a lot of weird rhetoric, including things like the Jewish question. This is really bonkers stuff. This is nuts. And you think, wow, they're out there. They seem to be growing. I could see why people are scared. That makes a lot of sense. But to overreact and throw out the alt-right is no better than like to just assume any given Muslim is like a hardcore Wahhabist and Islamist.
Right.
It's the same thing. Oh, you're an Islam. That's the lack of nuance.
So what has this changed about what you want to do? Because you're still about mythicism. You're still about challenging. You still want to bring in conversations.
Yep.
Obviously, you've learned something from this.
Yep.
Where do you go from here? Is there still a Mythcon? What is Mythicist Milwaukee doing? Is the staff still together? What's next for you guys?
Yeah, the team's still together. We are planning Mythcon 5 right now. We obviously see a need in having these topics come on. One of the craziest criticisms of us was, we're putting Sargon on stage, or we're putting Armored and Shoe on stage. Well, the Pabst Hall, which is one of the nicest halls in Milwaukee, it's probably number one, it only seats 1,500 people. When Sargon's on his stream, he's getting 15,000 live. When Armored and Shoe are live streaming, or even their videos, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views. So the fact that people think bringing them to a conference is any different really boggles my mind. It doesn't make any sense.
And I want to be clear too. It's not that you said, "Hey, here's our audience. Talk about whatever you want."
Right.
Yeah.
The plan was to have these folks challenged.
Well,
not always. And the
Right.
thing is that there was this conception that everyone that a certain segment of the population within atheism disagreed with, they had to be challenged. We weren't aware of this being the norm at other atheist conferences. People would just go up and speak. But for some of our guests, they had to be challenged.
That's a good point. That's a
that
really
was
good point.
already happening.
Yeah, because I've heard a lot of stuff at conferences where I'm thinking this is not okay.
Exactly.
But you don't challenge because they're a
Exactly.
speaker, and you don't,
But as an audience member, you can still challenge. And that's the other thing we said. It's like, if you disagree with these people, either you have one option, don't show up, or a second option, come with your best arguments and showcase why you think they're wrong. And like, what's wrong with them?
And the Sargon Smith specifically, like Sargon will call himself a reactionary. And at the Mythcon, he even said, "Thomas, you are the reason I am necessary." Right? That's sort of the definition. So he's okay with that. Thomas has called himself a partisan before, which I don't necessarily think is bad, but I thought this is great. You've got two people that are a little bit more polarized, and you don't want those people talking alone. You want those talking to each other. The Armored and Shoe, I really think are so centrist to not need as much opposition. I would challenge that they needed a post. Sargon, it didn't make as much sense because he works a lot better in conversation.
Let me ask you this question, because this is something that I think has been the most mind-boggling about this entire thing for me. There are events all the time where stuff goes on that I think is ridiculous. That's just the reality of it. I don't go to those places.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to support or hear a pastor get up on Sunday morning and say that gay people are going to burn in hell and you better turn or burn, and jump up on his podium and rant and rave about how disgusting and vile gays are. I don't want to hear that. Yeah. I find it abhorrent. I think it's disgusting. I don't go. I don't call bomb threats into the church. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I let them do what they want to do, even though. Yeah, I know. I'm about to be punched again for not calling it.
David, am I still on?
Yeah.
I think. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I? Okay.
Yeah. I guess that's my issue. Why? For so many years, our community has been so much about sort of talking to the religious right and saying, guys, we have a voice too.
Right.
Let Jewish folks have a seat at the table. Let Muslims have a seat at the table. Let atheists have a seat at the table, and Hindus and Native Americans. Let's all sit down and talk. We are important too. You don't get to control the rhetoric. That's what we've all said for years.
Yep.
We've had to fight our way onto interfaith panels because we don't have faith. But we've had to say, but we are representative of a large number of Americans. Let us at the table. We fought that fight. And now that we have it, what are we going to do?
Right.
Control the rights of others to speak and say, no, I don't like Ann Coulter, so I want to start a fire at UC Berkeley, or I don't like Milo, so I'm going to literally barricade a door. Yep. I mean, come on. We've been fighting for free speech for years, and now we're going to try to take it away from other people.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that was really upsetting for me, is just the fact that these atheist leaders came out against us, trying to blackball us. All these different atheist personalities are trying to blackball us for being controversial. Now, I don't, how quickly we forget. Atheism is controversial. I mean, if you look at what Madeleine Murray O'Hair did in her time, she was not the mainstream fucking media. You know what I mean? Like, to call us controversial and that we're just looking for controversy. Well, atheism is controversial in itself. And again, we weren't even planning on the YouTube people, performers to be controversial. But what's wrong with that? Like, I think that's one of the short-sighted narratives of this is the atheist world, the atheist conventions, the leaders. They need to see kind of what was here, because this is what people are interested in right now.
Yeah,
and in order for this to survive, we need to take on that controversy. We need to challenge it. We need to talk about it, because this is what people are talking about.
And I appreciate the steps that you've done, David, and Emery have done to allow us to be able to grow, within this community and this world. The separation of church and state is still something that is very important to us, and we still have to make sure, stays in place. There's right now the University of Minnesota came out with a report last year. It was a poll that said out of all subgroups and minority groups, atheists are still the most hated minority group in the United States, more so than any of all these other racial groups or sex groups. Atheists are still the most hated minority in America. So we are controversial just
we still have
for
a lot
existing.
of work to do. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
And be lucky that we're the most part in America and in the first world is not facing threats to our lives, right? In Bangladesh, you can be hacked to death in the street. There's at least 7 countries that I know of that to be atheist, you can the death penalty, and in many others where it's a criminal offense to some degree. So, I mean, we're lucky that it's not as controversial in comparison.
Yeah, and like I said, New Atheism has done a good job of taking away that stigma. And one of the ways that it can be done, and you know this, David, I know Emery in the crowd knows this, if you look at the LGBT community and that movement, Will and Grace did more for that movement than any protest in Washington or anywhere, because now you're winning over people's hearts and minds. And the reason why the YouTubers and the popular people in this world are popular is because they are entertaining. And people want to hear that. They want to see people that they like, people that they relate with, celebrities, whatever you want to call it, that, talking about the things they talk about, because now they feel more, invested in that. And, to say, utilizing entertainers is a bad thing. I mean, this is ridiculous. Another criticism we had was the fact that we backed Tommy O'Haver for making the movie The Most Hated Woman in America.
I still never saw that.
I know.
I still can't comment on it.
You need to see it, and I don't expect you to comment, but the point is, there was a Netflix premiered movie on atheism in America, produced and created, and maybe they didn't get everything in her, about her life right. They also left a lot of things about her life out that could have made her look even worse. But the fact is, atheism was brought to a media outlet that people are just constantly utilizing the younger people. I mean, Netflix and chill. Come on, like that's a part of the vocabulary and young people. You know, so
sure.
you know, so it's like that's huge for atheism and secularism.
And the criticism I've heard is that it wasn't done right and it made her look bad, and I haven't seen it. So
I still think that she looked like a troubled hero.
Yeah, she
like
did.
Many heroes.
She came out great in the end, and you know, any story you tell about any historical figure is going to have problems, and you know, but at the same time, it allows people to go look her up, check it out.
Sure.
You know.
Let's shift gears a little bit, because we're doing this for modestneeds.org.
Absolutely.
I want to focus now on.
Jump in before you shift gears.
What's up?
Well,
You got to grab a microphone.
I'm going to.
You can share mine, Emery.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, or take
I wanted
Brian's,
to add something to this discussion that's really poignant. Heather's listening live, and she asked me, we didn't know if we were going to say what I'm about to say publicly. We've talked for weeks and weeks and weeks about this, but I'm going to say it publicly now. We shut down Ardent Atheist and Skeptically Yours, not just because we were very busy, which we've been, but the final nail in the coffin was everything you've been talking about. We are giving up on atheism as an active participant because of this. Heather decided she didn't want to pick sides. So the side she chose was to no longer engage with this community. And that's why that's why we're closing down our podcasts. It's a fact. It's awful. It's true. It's sickening to us. We have friends on both sides of this argument that we care for deeply, and we disagree wholeheartedly with many of our friends. And Heather's not as good at interacting with others about this. No. I will tell my friends, I think you have your head up your ass. And I will tell my other friends, I think you're mistaken here and right there. She can't do it, doesn't want to do it. It makes her sick. She's tired of it.
And this is like one of the most influential people in atheism. I mean, this guy's connected to everyone. Like the fact that this kind of divide and these types of, you know, just ad hominem attacks and, you know, just will scare someone like that away. And thanks for saying that, Emery. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
And it really illustrates, you know, months and months of our lives of being called rape apologists and Nazis and, you know, crazy shit. Just for putting on a conference.
Yeah, and to say that we don't support, for instance, children and women, I mean, you know, Shelley Siegel's talent, you know, amazing talent, wouldn't be able to be heard in certain parts of the world because of, you know, some of the religious oppression that exists around the world against women. And I would really love to see social justice warriors use the same energy that they came at us for those parts of the world.
Good.
Yeah, and we'd support that.
Yeah, take Modest Needs, take that on Twitter and start spamming that to everyone. Like seriously, like that would do more than calling us Nazis.
If this community shared modestneeds.org half as much as they've been fighting over things, we would hit goals.
You wouldn't need it, Modest Needs.
Yeah, and I just want to say
everyone in the world.
And I just want to say just about that plug with modestneeds.org. I was really touched, you know, as I got introduced here earlier with just what this organization does, and it really gets to the individual, and it really reminded me again of just, you know, the humanist aspect of what we can be as an atheist community. You know, it doesn't matter.
And here's the thing. And right now, nobody is giving. There's nobody giving right now to Modest Needs. So let's change that.
Yes.
We're up here talking about some deep, heavy stuff, and I don't want to keep it in there, right? We need to change the focus here.
Sorry.
And let's talk about the humanism side of what it means to be secular, and why we need to help an organization like this.
If you listen to like conservatives, for example, like Ben Shapiro, will constantly criticize the lack of faith and saying the reason you don't have a community, you know, we can't expect the government to come in. This is where religious communities would give. Right, and he does have a point in that if you're in a religious community, you can turn to your church for help in the time of need. But now if you've gotten out of that community, like we have, because of very principled arguments that, you know, look, there's a lot of other things going on, but you're missing that safeguard. Yeah. So it's super important for the secular community to do that. Right, that's why Modest Needs is such a big deal, because these are working class people. I've read through some of them. You know, a 40-year-old father gets a brain tumor. Right, and it's clearly a pituitary tumor, because they say we don't have money for the hormone treatments now, which you would often get with that gland regulates all the hormones. So they didn't expect this added cost. And now they're up a creek. And I was like, wow, you could turn to your religious community for that, and people would probably get you the money you needed. Now, secular people can do the same thing. That's why I really feel like, we can cross the divide on this. I mean, put the debates of social justice or feminism aside. We definitely need to have a place for people to give. I mean, this is the argument that the religious use against us. And in some ways, we got to back that, because I think we can do the same thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And as we were talking about that, a $5 donation came in.
Thank you.
And let's do more and more of those $5 donations.
Thank you.
For the rest of this hour, let's do $5 donations for this one. This one we're working on now is a new mom struggling after missing work to give birth. I went over it a little bit briefly earlier, but this here says, this funding will restore my faith that there are still good people that are willing to help.
That's fantastic.
Faith in humanity is
right.
what we're talking about here. I'm one of those people who's always willing to help, but right now I'm really the one that needs it. This will bring my household current and allow me to be fully on track. She just needs help.
That's fantastic.
With a rent payment.
And
we're only $465 away from completing her goal.
And that's a perfect example of someone that can actually utilize and use social justice. That all that energy that goes into the hate, and even David, you taking on this topic. I mean, it's very, like we're like a stigma now. Like anyone we talk to in the atheist world, it's like, oh, you sure you want to post that? Because all of these things that have been said about us, and it's like, instead of taking all that negative energy and having it come our way, why don't really do some good in the world, And we've been throwing the conferences. One of the things they said that we make a ton of money. We don't make any money in the conferences. We do it because we feel there's a need. We feel it's a good opportunity for people to come together with like minds, make networks, make things like this successful in the future. And that's what it's all about. And it's just mind-boggling.
So let's do this, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I know you flew all the way, and I really appreciate it. It would have been really difficult if you only flew part of the way. But thanks for coming. Let's do this. Let's take the last sort of 10 minutes of this segment. You guys go. Let's tweet like crazy. Let's get it out. Let's help modestneeds.org. We'll take a short break. We'll come back. Our next guest is Godless Mom, Courtney Hurd, from blogging fame. I believe she was on CNN as well. Yeah. So she's going to join us via Skype, and we're so excited to have that. Mario Mouton is up next. After that, author of Tiny Thinkers, Phil Ferguson, Neil Polzin, Adam Reek, Steve Hill, comedian, is going to be here in person joining us. So we still have a lot more people to help and a lot more people to get up on the couch. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us. It's great charity.
For sure. For sure. So let's all break off and do social media, share it around like crazy. Folks, we really need your help with modestneeds.org right now.
Yeah.
Let's go make that happen. Guys, thanks for coming out.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
All right, coming up next, Godless Mom, right here on Dogma Debate.
Hey, I'm Adam Carolla, and I am the fourth listener to Dogma Debate with David Smollett.
Ian Harris's new one-hour comedy special, Extraordinary, will be available on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, and most video demand sites starting December 12th. Here's a little sample of what you're going to get.
By the way, I came up with what I think would be the